Okay, good evening and welcome to Office Hour for week 2. And as promised, we're going to go ahead and record this for those that cannot attend. Participation is highly recommended. I'd like to see put a face with a name and also engage in some questions and answers and just get an opportunity to talk operations management face to face. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and begin. This week is on product and service design. And I'll be reverting my eyes a little bit here, looking at the other screen while I have the PowerPoint going. So just please ignore that. Hopefully you're just focusing on the content. I see, and if you join during the recording of this, just feel free to chime in. If you got any questions, you can always interrupt. This is informal. It's not a formal lecture. So I just like to make sure that we cover some valiant points, rehash week 1 and give some pointers, some lessons learned that we had during week 1, and then roll into week 2 and look at some of the things that I've taken away from the readings and the videos and other information, such as my personal experience when it comes to product and service design. And then, of course, for you to share your experiences too during this hour. So without further ado, let's go into first, welcome, Matthias. I saw that you joined. Welcome. All right,
Thank you.
so week 1 lesson. Oh, no
Thank
problem,
you,
no
Professor.
problem. Feel free.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, no problem. Feel free to chime in anytime if you got
Thank
any
you very much.
questions.
I will.
Because I don't have my, I don't see any other videos up, and I can't see any hands raised. Oh, I see your video down there in the bottom. It's very tiny, so just feel free to chime in anytime. So week 1 lessons learned. Overall, very pleased with the performance of the class on the discussions and the assignments. I still have one more assignment left to grade. I did provide feedback, but we'll get to that in a second. Let's just go ahead and follow these bullet points to kind of keep me on track, because sometimes I can get distracted. So first bullet is just continue to use the answer keys for the discussion board. What I mean by that, in week 1, you should be able to go back in there and look. And if not, I can post that into an announcement. And it's just basically the answer keys to how to be successful in discussion boards. So I won't harp on that anymore. You can read that for yourselves anytime. If you have any questions, I'm available. Please reach out. As far as instructions, again, as described in the week 1 recording, is inside the discussions and the assignments. There's instructions, there's prompts to what to do. Be careful and read those very carefully and make sure that you provide all the requirements for each one, discussion and assignments. Highly encourage, even in the discussion boards, to use the level headers to first set you up for success. It's not a grading requirement, and you don't get deducted points if you don't use those headers, but it sure is helpful to make sure that I know. And since we're virtually, it's not like you can tell me and talk me through your discussion. So the only way is through context. And so through your textual writings for your discussion. So the headers let me know that you're talking about that topic and you're covering it thoroughly. So it's totally clear. So I can't say, oh, you missed that part of the requirements. You can defend yourself. And it just makes it much more easier to read when you go in that order too, and deliver those discussions properly. Obviously, the assignments, it's requiring an APA format, templated paper, and the level headers are a requirement in an APA paper. So that's pretty much a given. But again, continue to use that. The difference between a C and an A, and what I mean by that is those requirements. Sometimes they're just outright yes or no questions. they tend to be open-ended, so you can discuss, but sometimes it's just closed-ended. Like for instance, mission for this last week's assignment. Well, it's simple just to say what the organization's mission is and then move on to vision and then say what the vision is. Okay, so that's great. You answered the question. You did great job there. But to take it from that C level to an A level is to take the week's lessons and go in and explain what a mission statement is. What is a vision? Why is that important to an organization? Use your references and or maybe experiences. Have you been part of making a mission statement? Have you been part of making a vision statement or making recommendations to an organization in those two factors? So that's the difference between a C and an A. Sometimes it's just easier just to answer the question and move on, but take that moment to use those references and resources that you have in the class to dig a little deeper and be able to demonstrate some critical thinking and to display your knowledge of that individual topic in your answer. So that takes it from the C to an A. Is there any questions on that? I hope I explained that thoroughly enough. Any questions on that? Did I do all right in explaining that? I'll pause there. My one participant. Okay, we'll move on. Next area is inside your rubric for your assignments. Obviously, if you're using references in your discussion, it is good to cite that, obviously. But in your assignments, in your rubric, you'll have that APA. And then, of course, you're using your APA template for your Word document. And so in the APA, for the first assignment, I went through and I gave feedback, and I was going to deduct points, but I had second thoughts, and it is my discretion. I went ahead and took those deductions out for this week. But I challenge everybody to go and research the 7th edition of the APA manual. And these are some of the common pitfalls I saw for this week. Is the in-work citations as a whole for paraphrasing and direct quotes, the proper way of doing that. And I gave some examples here. As far as where to place the citation, is it in the sentence? Is it outside the sentence? Obviously, the answer is it's in the sentence. The period goes after the fact. Obviously, there's other ways to do the direct quotes, and because you can do according to Watts, and at the end put the parentheses in the year. There's a lot of different ways, but the manual will highlight those things. And my goal here is not to show you every way to do it. It's just to give some examples. And then the block quotes are for direct quotes, the block citations. Greater than 40 words in a direct quote. If you're going to take from an article, greater than 40 words is how to properly block cite that, is the indentation. And then the Word document, the template itself, as far as using proper title pages, the running headers, the page numbers, the level headings, the spacing, reference pages, the orders of the references, all those things. So if you have any questions on that, please feel free. I know Dr. Wallace did a wonderful video on that. If you will go back out and look on that, look for that. I can give a link to that if anybody wants to see that if you haven't already. But I want to put that out there now, so that way next assignments I'll be looking for the proper APA formatting and use of APA. So I just wanted to cover that in lesson 1, but overall, wonderful job for week 1. I applaud everyone for the work that they put into week 1. Moving on to the next slide is my instructor's takeaway from week 2's readings. And again, this is meant for a two-way conversation. I'll bring up some points and some talking points. It's not going to cover A to Z in week two's readings and lessons, but it's just going to bring out some points that I found very interesting, that I have some experience in, that I'd like to share with the class. And then, of course, feel free to share your experiences. I might ask of you and put you on the spot to share some of your experiences. If you don't have any, just simply say you don't have any. So for before we get going into that, is for work week two, make sure you read the instructions and requirements very carefully. Like I stated before, do that for every week, obviously. I want to point out for week two, especially the assignment, make sure you choose a different organization than you did for week one. So obviously, if you did Caterpillar this week, you don't want to use Caterpillar this coming week. So make sure you use a different company or organization. Now on to product and service life redesign and design. And what I liked was they gave a good chart in the actual textbook that shows the product life stages and how it starts out and it goes up into the development and the maturity, and then of course, and then it phases out. I like that. Why? Is because it's kind of similar to like I've worked a lot of health IT. And I've been a project manager and a operations manager in health IT, and that's something that we always shared with our sponsors and shared with them also how it will, as far as taking the product that we deliver in IT, health IT, and how it will slowly go into use with the end users. And so it just kind of reminded me of that. And then, of course, this product and service life stages impacts the organization, because that's what kind of sets it up and puts the ball on the tee, as far as I'm concerned, for service design and redesign, is that if an organization stays stagnant in their products or their services, and they just continue to operate without any other type of change of design or redesign, they're constantly looking for R&D, research and development. They're constantly looking for that competitive edge. Well, that life cycle is going to fall off, and then what are they going to be stuck with? It's like the phrase putting all your eggs into one basket. It's always good to continuously fill your basket with more eggs. So that kind of gives me that lead into the service design and redesign. What's the one thing that's most important whenever you're doing design and redesign? What is the one thing, whether it's a product or a service? What is one thing is the focus point for any of those? Any idea?
The customer?
There you go. You are absolutely correct. The customer is the most important thing. So with that, with design and redesign, you can think of things that come to mind as gathering the voice of the customer. Have you ever heard of that, voice of the customer?
Yes.
Yes. So getting the voice of the customer. And then, of course, that's doing surveys, product surveys, um, and actually taking that voice of the customer and the requirements and putting them to work when you do your design and redesign. There's a valuable lesson learned out there from a very popular company that I like to read, and I encourage you to go out and look at. I mentioned it in the discussion, and somebody did it. They talked about this company, Coca-Cola, back in 1985 when they redesigned. Uh, they went from their normal formula to the new Coke, I guess. It was called something like that. I can't remember exactly. I don't have it here in front of me. But that was a interesting case. If you get a chance, read that case study, and you can see how that voice of the customer might have been missing. And then, of course, some additional things that they did and learned from that. So that's a good one for to read for service design and redesign and how important that customer is. Another one is in my experiences we were contracted to do a website for women's health, and we did the bid proposal. And the whole time that we did the bid proposal, we did really well. And they actually gave us some feedback. And the one feedback that um, really brought to light an important factor is during that whole presentation, the one complaint that they had or recommendation to improve was that we had no female presence in our team when we presented this. So there was no voice of the customer available to show in our thoughts of how we were going to design this website for women's health. So that's just another example of the importance of the service design and redesign when it goes to presenting to the customer or to the business that's going to be delivering to the customer. So, and then the product design and redesign. And I'll pause there and I'll turn to you, Matthias, to talk about your experiences with product design and redesign. Do you have any experiences with that?
Yes, I do. Actually, on my line of work, automotive industry, the design of the product is the very critical stage, right, to ensure that we have the right quality part at the end for the assembly of the cars, right? Um, the product design and redesign, in my experience, it's always a two-way communication channel where the design team has to get the input from cross-functional team to ensure they have the right design in place, right, for manufacture for manufacturability and or quality or uh, customer satisfaction, right? So
Very good. Have you ever, the reverse engineering is the next, and I found that very interesting. And I've seen this a lot where uh, large organizations will take a product that's already being delivered by competitors and they'll take it and put it into their engineer department or their research department, and they'll break it down and then start already where they've already, accomplished the product itself and do some reverse engineering to come up with improvements. And they start adding those improvements. So then they're a foot ahead or a step ahead of the competition in that same product, and they'll come out with their own version. And I found that very
yes,
interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the only catch with that is if you can do patents or copyrights on those things, then of
Mhm.
course that puts a pinch on that reverse
Yes,
engineering. And
yeah,
what came to mind on that was research and development, especially in the pharmaceutical industry.
yeah.
You'll
The
see
reverse
generic
engineering,
and
the reverse
go ahead.
engineering, we know it more commonly as a benchmark in the automotive industry, right? And yes, like you said, big organization and most of our, I mean, like General Motors, right? I work for GM, and some of our biggest suppliers that do this all the time, right? GM actually gets a car from any other OEM and disassembles the whole car and starts studying the parts, and there's a repository of that reverse engineering data so you can improve uh, products in the future, or yeah.
Yep. What I found very interesting in this week's reading is uh, how much environmental, cultural, and other variables that take place into product design and redesign. I've never really thought of those things from a service standpoint,
Yeah.
but I can see that from a product standpoint, especially like recycling, uh, all the environmental restraints and restrictions. I know on the service side, we have some restrictions like HIPAA, OSHA,
Mm-hmm.
are some of the government type regulations that we have to quality and standards, um, safety, obviously, infection control. Those are some of the things that apply to the service side of the house. But the product side, that's what's really been opening my eyes, as I mentioned before, until my recent job of producing and developing websites for organizations for clinical research trials have been very limited on the product side. So I'm in the infancy stage, and I'm jealous of the majority of you on the product side. But however, service, I have a wealth of knowledge when it comes to OM. So quite interesting that I've learned a lot. This week's chapter 4 was a really good read. I don't know if you had a
It
chance
was.
to read that yet. Yeah. And then there's
Yeah, I
only
like it.
3
And
articles this time. Yeah.
for me, the interesting
I'm sorry.
part was that the service design section, because I've never worked on service, and it made me think. Some time ago, somebody asked me like, "Have you ever worked as a waitress, or will you ever work as a waitress?" And I said, "Well, I will, right? Obviously, any work is good, and any job is good." But I'm not good. I don't know anything about service. I don't know how to do it. So when I was reading through the text, I was just thinking about that, like, oh wow, there's it's just like product, just with some variables, more variables, and different characteristics. But you have to design your service in order to work, in order for it to work, right? So
Correct. Correct. Yep. There's a lot of things to take in consideration that I've never even thought of until I have read this chapter. This was really good chapter. And the articles, uh, you'll be happy to know there's only 3 articles this time compared to what 6 or 8 last week. So a lot easier to read this week. The videos were really good and entertaining.
yes.
The next one is the R&D. Now R&D and product, like we said, is probably a little bit different than in a service. But one that came to my mind with my experience as I was a pharmaceutical rep for a little while. I thought about going down that career field. And then, of course, working in clinical trials as a research nurse myself, I was a participant in the research through pharmaceutical trials and clinical research trials. I was a nurse involved in that. But as far as pharmaceutical industry, they have the patents on the drugs, and obviously, while their drugs are patented, and then they have the financial advantages and getting the monies for that while it's in patent. But once that patent runs out, the other competing pharmaceutical companies can take that medication, do reverse engineering, and then come up with a generic or another like product that does the same treatment and has the same effect. And then obviously the price, what happens to that? It goes back to that product service life stage, right? It's at
Yes.
maturity, it's reached its max growth for the company, and they got to continuously, the company, and that's the operations management side of the house. We got to constantly be continuing to push the CEOs and the stakeholders and the shareholders to continue to research and develop and design and redesign, right? So we can stay competitive and stay in that win. So that was an example that I had. Do you have a research and development experience on the product side? I know I'm always
No,
putting you on the
not
spot with
really.
this.
No, I'm more on the hands-on build and make parts with good quality and put it out the door. But what was interesting
Okay.
to me was the amount of billions of dollars that are put by big companies on R&D, right? And it's amazingly like there's I think that's on the text, or maybe I read it somewhere else, but like yeah, billions of dollars big industries putting in R&D.
Yep. Yes, it's worth it because it constantly it's the return on investment, right? And that's what
Yes.
it comes down to. What have you done for me lately? The next one that I from this readings was in reference to mass customization. And what came to mind was, well, that's all about standardization, right? Everybody's into standardization and focusing on something that will, with less waste and defects, to turn the buck and increase the ROI, return on investment, and of course, appease the customer. What this brought to my mind is probably more on the service side of the house. Go figure, right? Is restaurants. You ever go into a restaurant and they have like a 15-page menu
Yeah.
and they just don't focus on anything? Now you compare, I'd be curious to do a comparison, a case study on a restaurant that has a 15-page menu versus a restaurant that has a 2 or 3 page or maybe even a 1 page menu
Hmm.
where they focus on fried chicken and that's what they specialize in. Versus that 15-page menu that you can get everything from hot dogs to lobster and caviar. So do they really specialize in anything? And what's the quality look like? And then not to mention, how's that affect the supply chain management? You think about that. How are they going to JIT, just in time? They got steak in their refrigerators that are like 20 years old, waiting to be served. You know, how do they
Yeah.
bring in the filet mignon ready just in time to order that when that one person out of 100 people goes to page 12 and orders that filet mignon? You know, so makes you really wonder, and you appreciate the learning of the standardization. So that just kind of brought that to my mind and made it a joy to read. Another one was the Kano model. And I thought that is something, and I might bring this up even in my personal life where I'm currently working, is this Kano model and talking about uh, as far as your designs and redesigns of your have your basic, which is just what are the requirements, what they're expecting, meeting those expectations of the customer, and then it performs to their expectations. It's able to do when you turn on the radio, it plays. And then here's the thing, the kicker, the wow. What's the wow? And I think this is what really sets it apart is, you know, gives that competitive edge to that product or to that service. What is the wow? What keeps me coming back to that uh, organization for that product or that service? So I thought this was an interesting read. I don't know if you had a chance to read that yet, but I found that is very interesting. All right, moving on. Just operations management, kind of bring this back to forefront, is that it focuses. That's in a nutshell, operations management. That's what it's about, is getting that product and the service to the customer. And anything and everything that touches the product and services in an organization is fair game for operations management. HR, finances, quality, supply chain management, all the way through, and helping to get that product and that service to that customer and continuously improve upon that through the design and redesign of each one of those. So that way you constantly move, because this doesn't stay still. The customer's requirements and their demands, it doesn't stand still. They're constantly moving. They're constantly wanting something new. Uh, what that brings up an idea. You ever hear of chasing electronics? My boys, they're constantly chasing electronics, wanting that new cutting edge of electronics. I want that new TV with the new 5D or whatever. Is that, and that's the thing too, is electronic companies. That's a two-sided sword. What I mean by that is they're
Yes.
constantly changing their models. That can work against them just as much as work for them, because customers can get upset. I have the best phone, but it's only the best phone for a day, and then the next thing is out there even better. And so I'm never at the peak of this phone. I want to be at that best stage of the phone. I want to be able to tell my friends I got the best phone, and they say, "No, you don't. I just got this yesterday, and it's better." So it's a very fine line when it comes to that. So it makes operations management very exciting and always moving. So stay on your toes. And then, of course, the operations management strategy, the product and service design and redesign, that that you'll see that written into a lot of organizations' strategies is improving upon their products and services and redesigning them or coming up with new products and services in design. So I found just kind of bringing that back into focus for us so we can come back and what's this all mean to operations management. And this is just a good slide I wanted to share. Obviously, I took this from the readings. Just identify the difference between service and product design. I always like these types of tables and charts to try to just break it down. It makes it easy in a snapshot. And then we won't go into each and every one of these, just see if there's any in here that might strike a chord for you. If not, we'll move on. Anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. And then and this again, also taken from this reading, the textbook is all about the customer. Like you said, you answered that question absolutely correct. I greatly appreciate that. And as far as the product and service design, it's focused around the customer and the customer satisfaction. And what I really liked about this table here is just to show how involved departments are in an organization in product and service design and redesign. Excuse me. Look how many times operations is on here and marketing. It's those two departments according to this table. And in my experience, I believe it's true, is doing the design and redesign of products and services. These are just some of these tasks that we do in order to make it to fruition. So it just goes to show the departments and sections that are involved in this. And when it comes to documenting specifications, again, I as an operations manager, I find that I'm heavily involved in that, writing SOPs and workflow processes. So I found it very interesting. The one article that is recommended for reading talks about process improvement. Remember last week, some of the things that I think are valuable tools to have in a tool belt of an operations manager based on my experiences. What were some of those? BPR, business process reengineering, Lean Six Sigma, project management, operations management, TQM. That article sings all of those tools and techniques and certifications of an operation manager. I thought that was quite interesting. That was a good read too. So anyways, that pretty much covers what I wanted to cover this week. I hope the lessons learned from last week helps, and I want you to be successful. So take the lessons learned that we did in week one and apply them to the weeks following, and I think you'll be successful. Again, just keep up the great work. I'm very impressed. And now we'll pause here and we'll just go to Q&A. I'll do the part of communication that I'm weakest at. It's listening. So Matthias, I'll listen. Go ahead. Mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. No, I really appreciate your feedback on week one. I did had the chance to go through the rubrics and the comments on the grades. I will focus on keep up with the recommendations. I do have the manual here. I always try to uh, to find the right uh, thing to quote. I'm still learning a little bit about it, but I will look into your recommendations. Besides that, I think I'm okay for this week. I'm finishing up working on my discussion post, and yeah, that's it's good. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Now, as far as my feedback, week one's assignment, I did put in there what was going to be deductions. So you'll see
Mhm.
that. I did take the deductions initially, but then I had second thought. I thought, well, this is the first week. Uh, I'll present it and try to cover it and encourage you to go out there and mend your ways. And then starting week two, I'll start looking. And this is not an APA class. That no, this is an operations management class. I'm quite well aware of that. But however, at the level of education that you're, it'd be it wouldn't be right if I just let you go along writing
Yeah, no,
without the proper formatting. Because as you go on in schooling, if you go for your doctorate, your PhD, or another master's degree, um, it'll be valuable to you to know how to do it properly. So that's just my opinion and how I'm going to approach it for this class. And feedback, the feedback that I do provide, again, this is a virtual class, so I can't give you one-on-one feedback. And then, of course, then you would return your agreements or disagreements associated with feedback. This is virtual, so all I have is at my mercy is to write my uh, my view of your assessment of your work. And so if my feedback is unclear, or if you do not agree with the feedback that I have, it is okay to come back and ask questions or rebuke the feedback and defend your work. I have no problems in that. Sometimes I'll read it and reread it, and I'll still miss maybe a section that you didn't cover or a requirement you didn't cover, and I'll deduct points. And you feel as though you did, and you just need to point it out to me. Feel free to privately message me, however you want to call me. It does not matter. Uh, and I'm human. I'm and
no, thank you.
yeah, so feel free to defend your work. It's your work,
Yeah,
and
thank you, Professor. I
I'm
appreciate that.
here. Yeah, yeah, I'm here to get you to that next level, not to stop you from getting to that next level. I have no
Sounds
problems.
good.
Yeah, I want you to succeed.
Thank you.
So now, I just want to make sure that's totally clear. Antoine, you joined us. I apologize. I will. The recording will hang out there, obviously, so you can catch the first, what, 40 minutes of this. Is there any
Okay.
questions that you might have, Ann?
No, no questions here. First week was a success. Now I'm just trying to carry that momentum into week two.
Yes, very good. And again, look at the APA recommendations I have on this slide. I can just bring it up real quick, maybe.
Okay.
History. See if I can do it this way. Yep, good. Worked out pretty well. There you go. Just week one lessons learned. I'll just leave that slide up for Antoine and sick. Um, I know the feedback I put in the first week's assignment. I did go back at everyone's, and they did have issues with APA. I didn't catch some the first go around. I didn't give any feedback otherwise, but after I went back and looked at everybody's, I try to be a challenging thing to do as you're doing virtual grading is making sure that you're consistent in how you're grading. As you read, I like to take breaks. I do a couple and I take a break and then do a couple. And if you do them straight in a row, sometimes you start out maybe even a little harder on the beginning and then you're lenient as you go, or vice versa. So that's just a lessons learned in teaching college online. So that's something I try to do, just me personally as an instructor. I try to do a couple, take a break, come back in, do a couple more. But it's still consistency of how, okay, what did you accept in that one paper? You accept in the next paper based on, how in depth they covered the information, the APA, how strong APA. So it would be nice if I could have all the papers up on 10 different screens and be able to look at left to right. That'd be really ideal. But that's not the case. I don't have 10 screens at my house. But those are my frustrations. I know that's not your problem. But I'm just trying to share some of the things that I try to really finesse and work on in my grading. But this is the APA I was talking about, Antoine. So I'll let you take a look at that, and then I'll listen to your other questions. And if you have any questions for either of you, and if not, we can close the recording in the evening, and let's get back to your evening with your business. Any questions? If not, feel free to drop off at any time.
All right. Thank you, Professor. Thank you for the catch up and the instruction here today. All right. Have a good night.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Bye.
Night.
I'm done.
Antoine, any questions?
All right.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I had someone had one of my employees walk in on you.
Oh.
I had to talk to him really fast. But yeah, the only question in regards to the APA format, I kind of did everything sort of the same way I did first week. So does this like I feel like I did everything correctly? I mean, I used Thinking Storm. I didn't really talk much on my APA, so I'm thinking I'm pretty good. But are you gonna grade the same in regards?
Go back in and look at week 1.
Okay.
Next week, I'll be looking closer. I'll be holding people to the APA standards. This week, I was going to deduct, but in yours, here, I'll stop recording.
Well, when you say next week, you mean next week, week 3? Because this week is
2.
Okay.
For the assignment. For the assignment.
Oh, for the assignment. Oh, the assignment I did
really.
Yeah, the assignment I did really well. You